Assalamu alaikum everyone. Jazakallah khair for your attendance. Inshallah, we will be getting started shortly.
Assalamu alaikum, Kashif.
Alaikum salam, it's me, Imam Ahmed.
Inshallah, let me I'll go ahead and start.
Yeah, you're good to go. Just share your screen with the presentation, inshallah, and then you'll be good to go to get started.
Inshallah. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف المرسلين سيدنا ونبينا وحبيبنا محمد صلى الله عليه وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم تسليما كثيرا. Inshallah ta'ala, continuing our series of fiqh of worship acts, and we are talking our series on wudu and the etiquettes of wudu ablution and some of the requirements of that act of worship. Alhamdulillah, we talked and we covered, and we also talked about some of the recommended acts of this worship acts. Alhamdulillah. Today, we have yesterday just to build on where we left off yesterday. We talked about nullifications of al-wudu ablution, of things that the scholars have agreed upon. No disagreement, so you should have no confusions. And as you can read on the slide, just a quick reminder of what we talked about yesterday. So just take a second to look at it and remember that this is where we left off. These are acts that would nullify wudu, and all scholars agree on those. Those come mainly very known to us as we would grow up with these, and we understood it that way. Except maybe the one before the last, that's the one that we emphasized on. So for those who joined later and do not understand, you can, inshallah ta'ala, review the video of yesterday in the Google class, inshallah ta'ala. Or actually at the beginning, we also explained those. So inshallah, that should help. So we would not take, inshallah, more time on that. Now, for today's, bi'idhnillahi ta'ala, we will talk about nullification of al-wudu ablution, but with things that really not necessarily agreed upon. Things, this is where you sometimes different school of thoughts, and some people will come with different culture. They come from different walks of life and different, places. And that's why people say, I thought this would invalidate your wudu. And you said, no, I always do it. And then people get really confused and they think that they've been doing wudu wrong for all their lives, but they're actually not. It's just all about those fine branches of details in our faith. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, for His wisdom, left it for a room of exercise of judgment, of people looking into the need of others, where it comes very handy to them when it is not as an obligation that they have to do. And we talked about like the wiping or like the wiping on the hair on the head, if it's full or part of it. And you know how sometimes it comes very handy to know that if I were to wipe on a part of my hair, especially for the sisters out in public, that would be sufficient enough to fulfill the requirements of the wudu. This is where the knowledge comes handy, where people really used to have extremely hard, difficult time to actually do it and take it off in public, and they don't know if they can or not, and they would go into a lot of hardship. Now, with that, today we will talk about things that are not agreed upon. One, what are nullifying acts of wudu that are disagreed upon by Muslim jurists? One, directly touching private parts without any barrier. So this is something that you would wonder. I thought this, like some people say, I thought this was, agreed upon, but actually it's not. Touching a private part is not agreed upon. We are going to go a little bit in details in these slides, and inshallah ta'ala, hopefully that I would be able to clarify for you where the disagreement is and came. So first, directly touching private parts without any barrier nullifies with or without lust. So you have the majority of scholars that would lean toward and incline toward any type of touching of private parts would invalidate the wudu. And you can read all the schools of thoughts that came to support this opinion. Second point is that that does not nullify, it does not nullify the ablution, the wudu that is, without lust. And you have also the scholars and the school of thoughts that came, the schools of thought that came to actually support this opinion. So now to break it down for you, we have in general, the general title is touching private part, does it nullify my wudu? Now, somebody might think, why would even that be discussed? It does, because a lot of time we don't even know what people go through. I'll just give you an example. Somebody who was just taking a shower and they made their full wudu and they got it all done, and alhamdulillah rabbil alameen, and they finished and they turn off the water, and as they are drying up their bodies, by mistake, they touch their private part. So if they go with the majority of opinion, that simple touch nullifies and invalidates their wudu, which means that they have to turn on the shower again, or they have to get out and go to the sink and make wudu, which comes sometimes to be a little bit of a hardship, especially if the time is pressing for them and they really need to get out, or sometimes it's really inconvenient. You know, I just got up shower. I just got out of shower. I just dried myself, and just a simple touch. Here we go. Now I have to repeat all the wudu. Now this is where knowledge comes very handy, where you actually get to know that maybe my culture, oh, after all, was not the only right thing, but actually other major scholars don't see that touch would nullify your wudu. So now what we agreed upon is that that touch has to be an innocent touch. It's not a touch with lust, right? So that's how we break it down. One opinion is any touch, any simple touch, with or without lust, the wudu is invalid and it has to be repeated. Second opinion comes as a second layer. No, they do actually go into details. They say not any simple touch, but if it's a simple touch, like the example of the shower I brought you, no problem. It's not a problem at all. But a touch with lust, then that's a completely different scenario. And that is a touch that actually nullifies a wudu. Second is the excessive bleeding. We touched base on that yesterday, and we said that regular, normal bleeding should not, inshallah ta'ala, make you repeat your wudu or get out of your salah if you're actually, it happens with a very simple, like nosebleed or what have you. But rather here we're talking about excessive bleeding. So according to the Hanafi and Hanbali school, it does nullify your wudu. So you have to go back and repeat. And remember, we talked about this is just more of a fiqhi study. But when it comes to practicality, of course, somebody that is really heavily bleeding, they need to definitely stop and go take care of themselves. And then after they rest and settle and everything, by all means, they can just go and do their wudu again. Now, Scholars discuss that because you have some people, again, remember, Islam came to accommodate every single soul on the face of the earth. It is so convenient for us. It is so easy for us to say, why is this being discussed? Just go and make wudu again. Yeah, of course, it's so simple for us to say this and so easy to say this because we're not being grateful about the ni'mah that we are blessed with, the hot water that we have, the cold water that we have, the convenience that we have, the water facility that we have, all this that comes handy to us anywhere and any place that we go to, we can access it. But there are people on the face of the earth where this doesn't come handy. So making wudu again for them is a major hardship, especially if water is very limited to them. So by all means, they would love to know that there is an opinion that says, even with my nosebleed that I had and I kind of heavily, bled and what have you, does not make me go and have to repeat my wudu. And that is the Maliki and the Shafi'i school, schools of thought. They come to say that even excessive bleeding does not make you have to repeat your wudu. Now, the nullification of al-wudu ablution, this agreed upon by Muslim jurists. We continue. We talked about 1 and 2. Now, number 3 is vomiting. This is very, very common that people would ask, well, if I throw up, does this invalidate my wudu? And the answer again, according to the Hanafi and Hanbali, yes, it does nullify, or it nullifies the wudu, but it does not nullify the wudu according to the Maliki and Shafi'i. I personally do not see throwing up comes with any strong or any obvious dalil that really straightforward makes it obvious that somebody has to repeat their wudu. And that goes also for fasting. Maybe people don't commonly ask about wudu because, again, we are blessed to have access to water all the time. But what is commonly asked always during Ramadan, during fasting, because there is also that perception, is that when someone throws up during Ramadan, during fasting, that this invalidates their siyam and fasting. And that's big for them. I've been fasting all day long, and just before, Maghrib time, something happens, and then a person has to throw up and they thought that they have lost the day of fast, which is something I don't see any really obvious dalil and proof that comes to support that. Number 4, touching a woman under all circumstances. So you have the Shafi'i school that actually comes to declare that any touch, any simple touch, among spouses, like a husband comes and shakes hand or just taps on the hand of his wife or her shoulder, or even touches her face, whatever, any kind of touch, direct skin to skin, to the Shafi'i school, that nullifies the wudu, and the wudu has to be repeated. Where at other schools actually go into the details that we talked before, and they say, no, we have to actually define what kind of touch is this. So again, if the touch is a simple touch, then they don't see a problem with that, and they don't see that it nullifies. So, which is the second one, that's touching women lustfully. So even a lustful touch has to be discussed deeply, because those schools, why did they differ with the Shafi'is? Because they actually, and when you read the book along with the slides that I have you, I do want you to read the book, because that's going to be part of your homework, is that you read the details of the outline points that I put for you on these slides, because we're making these slides simple just for simplicity. Now, the details of it is that they come to disagree and to differ because they have authentic hadith and practice of our beloved Prophet Muhammad SAW, that he used to have his wudu, on, and, he has a fresh wudu. And as he wants to depart the house and he wants to get out and go to pray and get busy with his companion and what have you, so he's leaving his wives for a while and what have you. This is part of, alhamdulillah, the beautiful relationship that he used to have with his wives. So he would actually give them the goodbye kiss. So he would kiss and leave, but he would not renew his wudu. So that's a touch. That's a direct skin to skin touch. And actually, that's not any type of touch. It's not like shaking hands or tapping or what have you. That's what we really humanly consider to be what? It's an intimate touch. So even the scholars say, yeah, it's an intimate touch, but these touch or touches are becoming very normal to spouses. So they got into a deep discussion of a touch with an arousal, sexual arousal, that is. So to simplify it, some scholars say any simple touch nullifies. The other scholars say, no, listen, we have to talk about what kind of touch. If it's a simple touch, even if it's an intimate touch, like Prophet Muhammad SAW used to kiss his wives and get out and go pray without renewing his wudu, that's fine. Now, a touch with intimacy, with lust that actually causes a sexual arousal, that's where the nullifications of the wudu would actually take place. So I hope this I was able to clarify for you. That's why, when you read fiqh, you get really confused because, a lot of the scholars are absolutely scientists. So they go into every step of the way to define every possible scenario. So they bring you all the things. And that's why when you start reading, deep into fiqh, you get a lot of opinions and you get a little bit confused. That's why here the objective of this series is just to give you practical general knowledge where you can actually apply it in your daily lives, because you're not really specializing to become a student of knowledge specializing in fiqh and usul al-fiqh. That's not, because if that was the case, then we would not go through these series and those slides. It would have been volumes of fiqh books that you have to go through, and you have to memorize every opinion, and you have to derive every opinion, and every opinion was based on what kind of proofs and what have you. And I'm not saying this to brag about it, by the way. Even with specialization in this field, even with the Islamic knowledge that we have, I have myself, with the degree that I have, I don't know, I'm not trying to be humble, this is really true. This is a vast, major, vast field that really takes people that really dedicate themselves for it. So what do I have? I myself have also general knowledge, maybe more than you, but general knowledge is still. So I don't know really the depth and the absolute details of every opinion and the proof that every opinion carried and was supported with and what have you. That's why it needs a lot of reading, and it needs review, and it needs somebody to research more and to get into it. Maybe the only difference between you and me is that I have the background and I have the specialty in it, that when I actually read, I might, pull the strings way faster than you. I understand way faster just because of that background. But we are all into this. This field is big and it needs a lot of patience where we understand it. Number 5 is laughing during prayer. So again, we are talking about wudu, and I'm not sure why this was put into the wudu section, but I think inshallah I'll skip that and we'll talk about it when we actually get into prayer. 6, eating camel meat. When this is something pertains especially to the Arabs in the Arab Peninsula and what have, this is really big to them, eating camel meat, because there are some saying of the Prophet that you need to renew your wudu. So the scholars came to discuss this, and they said the Hanbali, they come to say that actually eating a camel meat would nullify the wudu, but it does not nullify the wudu. That's according to the majority of scholars. 7, washing a dead body. When we go to the janazah, when we actually in the masjid, we prepare the body, and when we wash it, you want to know, because you might hear, I hear some people say that you have to do wudu, some people say you have to take ghusl, some people say that what have you. I just did the body of the wudu, and that happens to us a lot. Can I go? Where am I going to go now? Where I'm going to take a ghusl or what have you? So now just to know that washing a dead body in general for the wudu, that pertaining to the wudu, the Hanbali see that it does nullify and you have to renew your wudu. That's the least that you need to renew your wudu. The majority do not see that washing a dead body nullifies your wudu. So this is good for you to know that if you were pressed on time, that you really don't have to renew your wudu, and you are being supported by the majority of the scholars that they don't see that you need to renew your wudu when you wash a dead body. Last point for today's session, sleep in all cases, even light sleep. So there is the Zahiri school, those who take texts literally as it is stated, and they don't dig really deep into it because they say we want to be always cautious. So they look at the text of Prophet Muhammad, they say any kind of sleep. So let's not get into stages, dozing off, or deep sleep, or did you actually lose consciousness, or did you snore, or were you seated fit that you know that even when I went into deep sleep, I did not release gas. They don't go into any of that discussion. They say any definition of sleep, you lost your wudu. You need to go and renew it. Get up and go make wudu if you're in the masjid, and if you're at home, you need to renew your wudu. Some other scholars see that it does not nullify, and that's, as you can see, the majority actually say no, we're not just going to take the text as is. There is a reason, because we apply the text according to the incidents that took place, to the stories that came behind that. So when Prophet ﷺ saw some people, they looked like they were asleep, so they looked at their position, how they were seated, and they went into a lot of details of discussion. That why you hear sometimes that if you were firmly seated and you kind of know that position would not allow you to release gas, then you're okay, because they're focusing only on releasing gas. They're not really focusing on the sleep itself. But I would say, if you're home, by all means, go ahead and renew your wudu. Where does this fiqh and understanding come handy? Like if you're at Jum'ah prayer, and sometimes it happens to us, and you are in the deepest place of the masjid, and you just dozing off. Really, it's like in between. I know for a fact I did not go to sleep, but I also lost a little bit of focus on. I'm in between, so I got that nodding of a head or what have you. This is where this opinion, you do not need to feel guilty, because the vast majority of the scholars support you that you were well seated, and this, slash of a second did not allow you to release gas and what have you, and you were, so you're all good. So that's where you take this opinion that I don't need to get up, I don't need really to cross the lines and to go over people's shoulder and to go to the bathroom facility, and for those of you that went to Umrah and Hajj, this is where this opinion would come so handy. It's like you have always deprived from sleep, you're always sleepy, and you are in the haram, and waiting the salah, and you just had that split of a second where you just dozed off and your head nodded down, and now talking about renewing wudu, ya Allah, this is like you're going in a battlefield. So this is where you say, no, I'm not renewing my wudu, and alhamdulillah, I'm supported by the majority of the opinions of the scholars. So this is where knowledge comes to actually make you comfortable. Sometimes you don't feel guilty that you have done something that was not supposed to do, but rather now you feel that, alhamdulillah, I am comfortably going without renewing my wudu. I'm doing my salah, because it is really a hardship. It is very inconvenient for me to leave the haram and go outside and go to the washroom facility. Not only that, it's hard, but I'm going to even lose my salah. I'm not going to be able to catch the jama'ah. I've been waiting and waiting and waiting for that. And let alone if it was a Jum'ah prayer, forget it about leaving the haram and what have you. So inshallah, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless you all and make you among those who seek knowledge with inshallah patience and with dedications and commitment. So inshallah, with that, I will end today's session. I'm going to stop sharing, and inshallah, see questions. Uh, so somebody reminded me is that the book that says When I skipped because the slide said a prayer. So I'm so glad that I am being reminded. We talked about laughing and the slide said prayer. That's why I skipped it. I said when we go to the prayer, but I did forget to tell you that laughing when it pertains to wudu, because we're talking about wudu, that as you're making wudu and you're laughing and what have you, according to the Hanafis, that it does nullify your wudu. So jazakumullah khair for sending that. This is excellent. This is what I love. I love this interaction. Please, yani, don't hesitate to send me any correction or reminder when I do come short. So I have also a question. I see you are letting us know the different opinions amongst schools and scholars. What about those that say they don't adhere to a school? Is it okay to pick certain rulings from different scholars? Like when I was first studying the deen more closely, I went with Shafi'i school. And I remember the wudu sections about touching spouse. And like even if I was handing my husband something and just like a simple touch, yes, the tips of the finger and what have you, and the hands touched. I was like, يعني, this is basically invalidate the wudu. We just broke our wudu. We stuck to that for a while. Then it was just too much. And we found that it's not agreed upon. So we kind of picked a different school of thought on that. Is that okay to do? This is an excellent question as a study case. Honestly, this is very good. Where the question comes very, and I detailed it because I wanted all the viewers to actually understand. This is where the Shafi'i school comes. Yes, that simple touch, that really tip of two fingers, even when you're handing something. You're in January, it is extremely cold, and you went to the grocery store and you bought something and the cashier happens to be the opposite gender and is handing you your change back, and just the tip of the finger touched, here you go, and now you lost your wudu and you have to go through all the process of wudu. It's extremely cold, you're outside, you're having like 16 layers on you because it's extremely cold, and you just, it is so inconvenient. The question comes, is it okay to go to different opinions? The answer is absolutely okay, because we're not picking and choosing for conveniency. As of conveniency, we are really going away from hardship. It's not about conveniency. The example I brought you, this is really, 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 it's a hardship. طيب, what about conveniency? Yes, even with conveniency, because Islam came to actually bring nothing but easiness and to bring people into convenience, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't want people to run away from His deen. So that's why you have this flexibility. So the question is it allowed? Yes, there is nothing in our deen that says you have to stick to a school of thought. These schools of thought came way later after Prophet ﷺ, because people started getting really, really weak in their religion and their faith, and they didn't understand the depth of the rulings. So the scholars started putting it in specific criteria. They had to have their fundamentals, their usul. They have to build on their formula. They have to derive. So that's why each school specified in different way of looking at the textuals of hadith and Quran and what have you, and the opinions of the scholars. And that's why you have it. But by all means, when you adopt any of these opinions, especially if these opinions are supported by an evidence, this is all good, inshallah, and you have no problem with that. So now we have another question. So when we change baby's diaper, okay, it would nullify our wudu. especially when we wash them in the bathroom sink versus using wipes. I'm not sure why I I don't understand. I'm not sure where I said something that touching babies would nullify your wudu. Uh, because touching babies would not really, even if you're changing their diapers, you might be talking about the najasa. And we remember we did specify that touching a najasa does not invalidate your wudu, but it makes it a must on you to actually clean that part that touched the najasa. Remember when I brought the example of the dog, and I said the body of the dog touched the whatever, or the saliva touched your hand. You just wanted to stop the dog, and the saliva of the dog touched your hand. So your wudu is still valid. It does not invalidate your wudu, but it does make you have to wash your hands. So if same thing would apply, Sister Mahat, to the question that, and if you have, if I made you confused in one area, please don't hesitate to reach out. I will explain it further, inshallah. Um, so if our hands comes in touch, yes. So I did. You're absolutely right. So I missed your question at the beginning. I didn't understand, thinking that I might have said something that. So it does not nullify your wudu, but definitely because you touched the stool of the baby and what have you, that you need to wash your hands. Yes. So now I have. Let me check also. Uh, I have also. Um, as I said, inshallah, for anybody that's viewing us, if you need to go, by all means, the session is done. I give you full, inshallah ta'ala, authority to leave, and that would not offend me in any way at all. And I do appreciate you committing yourself every day for at least 20 minutes of our time to go through this knowledge that would come, inshallah ta'ala, to make you knowledgeable in the worship acts that you connect with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on daily basis with. So here I have laughing during prayer. So I guess for the prayer, uh, I don't want to talk about prayers now. So let's talk about prayers, inshallah, when we get it. But it says on the authority of Abu Musa al-Ash'ari, the Prophet ﷺ, whoever laughs in prayer should renew his ablution and repeat his prayer. So this is something that we'll talk about, inshallah, when we go to the prayer. Because remember, if when we talk about the prayer, we'll talk about what invalidates your prayer. So if it
Assalamu alaikum. Looks like we lost Imam Muhammad. Inshallah, he'll be back on in just a second for anybody who still hasn't gotten their questions answered. Please be patient. If you have a question, just hang tight. Inshallah, he'll be back on in just a second. Jazakumullah khair. Also, for anybody who's watching us on YouTube, please feel free to type your questions in the chat box and we'll be happy to answer them, inshallah.
Assalamu alaikum. Sorry, I had a connection issue. So, inshallah ta'ala, um, I think, I think just we are covered to make sure that I got it. No questions, and I don't see any questions. So,
There's just
inshallah,
one last question, Imam Muhammad, I'm sorry. We have a question, does talking during wudu invalidate it?
so that's a good question. I think that's becomes more of a culture. We don't have any evidence that actually supports the notion of losing our wudu or making it nullified or invalidate our wudu just because somebody talks. So there is really no supporting evidence. But I would always say, out of respect to the worship act, is that the talk needs to be something beneficial. So it's not really socializing or somebody that's just chatting with a friend on the phone, talking about dunya things and what have you, and they're just making wudu at the same time. So that should not be part of the etiquettes. There is really nothing that I can say, even if it was socializing, that would come to say, well, that's going to invalidate your worship acts. I can't, because we have to have a supporting evidence for that. But out of etiquettes, out of respect to this worship act, I would definitely talk during my wudu if I need to talk, and it has to be something that is beneficial. I'm answering somebody, I'm saying something good, I'm saying dhikr, I'm reminding somebody as I'm making wudu to get ready. Like, let's say, a father and a mother, while they're making wudu, they're just calling out to their kids and telling them, please make wudu, we're about to pray. That's great, alhamdulillah, no any issues. But it should not be socializing, and likewise something would not be beneficial, part of the etiquettes of wudu, inshallah. So inshallah, with that, I will end the session. Jazakumullah khair, barakallah feekum for your dedications and commitment. May Allah reward you again and again for such commitment. And inshallah, I'll see you tomorrow. Jazakumullah khair, barakallah feekum. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.